Hi, this is Gil Kennedy. I'm President and CEO of Har-Co Credit Union. I'm so glad to bring you this second segment of our podcast where we talk about ways to travel through this journey that we're all finding ourselves on. As I mentioned to you in our last segment that we detailed how to deal with financial difficulties, it is our desire to be able to support you with information on how you can cope with these times. I'm excited to bring you this second segment that was completed by Dr. Reier, who is a certified functional medical expert. Dr. Rob will give you various techniques and coping skills to deal with your mental and physical well-being. So please enjoy and please share this with your friends and family. We're excited to continue these series with Harford Lifestyle Magazine.
Dr. Reier, thank you for spending some time with us here today. We wanted to share with our audience in this episode a little bit about your background. You were once the mayor of Bel Air, and now you are our hometown doctor. And talk a little bit about how you came to be part of this community.
Sure. Well, Larry, I hung out my shingle in 1999. That's when I started practicing here in Bel Air. And as you mentioned, served on the town board for almost a decade, serving the last two as the town's mayor. And really have, that was one of my goals when I first moved into this community, was to get involved as I possibly could in a number of different events through the Bel Air Downtown Alliance, and that's eventually what led me, into I guess you can say the political arena, although that wasn't something that was at the forefront of my goals at that point in time. And so Bel Air is an outstanding community, a small town, welcomed me, embraced me, and now I feel like was almost born and raised here, so love Bel Air and has so much to offer.
And your professional background from an education standpoint, went to school locally?
I did. Went to high school down in Baltimore County, went to St. Paul's, and from there went to Loyola and got my undergraduate degree from there at Loyola. And then my doctorate degree in chiropractic is from National College of Chiropractic, which is now known as the National University of Health Sciences, as our Loyola, which I understand you also are a proud graduate of, is now the Loyola University of Maryland. So I guess at the time of age when your schools you graduated from start to change designation. So, right.
Great. The situation we have now is unique in our history. The COVID pandemic is really affecting people in several different ways. And your approach is really interesting in the way you practice medicine. Share with us a bit about that approach to medicine.
Well, sure. Well, first is a point. I'm not a doctor of medicine, so I don't necessarily practice medicine per se. But we get kind of hung up in semantics there. As a doctor of chiropractic, I focus on the individual, take a more personalized, global, holistic approach to to the patient. Looking into all aspects, particularly when it comes to modifiable personal lifestyle factors. So we get into diet and nutrition and exercise and movement and sleep and relaxation and even looking at relationships. It's a much deeper dive into the patient care, and so it's not. I also do, because of my chiropractic training, I look at patients from a structural perspective, because that's also very important. But I see my role as a doctor, as a clinician, as an educator. How can I educate this patient? What tools and strategies can I provide for them to be healthier, to optimize their genetic potential?
So if we look at COVID specifically, you're dealing with it like everyone else, and your patient base, I'm sure, has lots of questions. And I think generally the medical community approach this disease And well, we're looking for a vaccine. We're looking for a cure for this particular pandemic that is going around. You look at it from a different perspective. Let's walk through each of them. First of all, it affects the immune system. Yes?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And I think when it comes to not only the current crisis that we're under, and I think what we've seen with COVID-19 is that it has exposed the liabilities of both managed and as well as unmanaged chronic disease in this country. And so a vast majority of Americans, because of their ill health, are compromised by this virus, and and tend to suffer much harsher consequences. I mean, there are all aspects of health that are going to allow for a more hardy and robust immune system to help the individual in when it comes to weathering the storm, if you will. That's what I try to educate people on, is that this virus is going to be with us from forever, okay, in some shape or form. But we can't just all sit around and hopefully, when we look into a vaccine, hopefully that'll be here sooner than later. But in the interim, it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to try to improve our immunity and our immune resiliency, if you will.
If I go down the 5 modifiable personal lifestyle factors you described, could I get some hints for the general population out there about how we protect ourselves from the COVID virus? And if we happen to contract it, what's going to be our way of getting through it? First, exercise and movement.
Extremely important. And I think oftentimes, Larry, most people are intimidated by, I got to exercise. It's a very arduous, laborious type of term. But what I try to stress, and what the term that I use in research, or not that I use, but it has been used in research, is you have to do what more the acronym of NEAT. And NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which I understand is a mouthful, but it just means we have to move more. Okay, and whether you're 8 or 80, we can all move more. We don't move enough, and it's important that movement helps with circulation. It helps with our lymphatic system. As our circulation improves, it also enhances a lot of those immune functions that we have in our body. So, and when possible, certainly during this, where you don't want to be inside. Exercise outside. And try to get out in the area where we have, the trails or the woods. The Japanese have a term called shirin-yoku, which means forest breathing. There's a lot of chemicals and compounds that we get from certainly this time of the year with allergy sufferers and whatnot. Some of those are problematic, but with that said, being outdoors has a very therapeutic benefit. And as an adjunct to that, certainly as our climate warms up, getting exposed to the sunlight. Vitamin D is huge, and we're finding out in the literature right now that those folks who are vitamin D deficient are again having more issues with dealing with this virus, as well as any virus for that matter, any illness. So exercise, you don't need to be an extremist and think, I need to go out and beat a tire with a sledgehammer, or go on a 50-mile bike ride. You just got to get outside, get yourself a good pair of walking shoes, and get your 10,000 steps in every day. Or if you are, and I'm thinking about our older population, for whatever reason, moving around up and down the stairs, moving around is very important. So,
Dr. Reier, let's move on to the second one on our list: food and nutrition.
Extremely important. I think most people by now understand how important our diet influences our overall health, and unfortunately, the vast majority of Americans, for whatever reason, their diet is full of processed foods, concentrated sugars, flours, industrial seed oils. And what these all do is they promote inflammation in our body. We're in a pro-inflammatory state, and that is a progenitor for all chronic disease. You know, whether you're talking about diabetes, or whether you're talking about cardiovascular disease or cancer or even Alzheimer's disease. So, and what it does do, that being in that inflammatory state also increases the potential for illness and susceptibility. Once again, getting back to one of our opening points about, you know, COVID-19 or any coronavirus, that you know, the consequences, and I think the statistics at this point in time, when we look at folks who have been hospitalized, the vast majority of them have had what we call comorbidity issues, where at least one, if not several, that has led to their hospitalization. So, generally speaking, if you're, you know, you want to gravitate more towards a diet that is replete in vegetables and unprocessed foods, and you know, you want to avoid the sugary beverages, the artificial sweeteners. You know, just a diet that is real food, real whole food, and stick to the periphery of the grocery store. And you know, I think at this time, unfortunately, during periods of anxiety and stress, we tend to, you know, gravitate more towards those foods that are comfort foods. And there's a physiological and neurological reason for that. I mean, those foods release a substance in our brain called dopamine, and dopamine is a you know, is a neurochemical that provides us with some momentary comfort, and but the long-term deleterious effect of eating those foods far outweighs the temporary you know, feeling of euphoria or comfort that we get from that.
Very interesting point, Dr. Reier, you just made about the grocery store. The mental picture I got is that the peripheral, meaning the periphery of the grocery store, all the healthy choices are on the outside, on the peripheral, and all the bad choices seem to be clustered in the middle of the store. All the packaged goods, all the things that I love the most, but I should be focusing on the not the frozen foods, but the fresh vegetables and the fresh fruits, the proteins, the grains, all the things that typically would be on the outside of the interior of the store.
Interesting you say that, Larry, and my own personal observation is that those areas seem to be fairly well stocked, which I think is a kind of an indictment that not many people are eating those foods. It's only when you go into the center of the store and go into the cookie aisle or the cereal aisle or the chip aisle that you're finding some issues. Yeah, you know, you hit the nail right on the head. It's you're staying on the periphery, and that's where you're going to find the you know, the healthier items. Yeah.
One of the things that I talk to my peers about with all the stay-at-home policy from the governor, we're losing track of time and place, and it's been harder and harder to relax and get some sleep. Talk a little bit about the importance of sleep and relaxation.
Yeah, during this, I know personally it's been difficult to kind of stay on your routine, and one day has kind of bled into the other, and oftentimes you wake up and you wonder, okay, what day is this, you know? And but sleep is probably, and research is bearing this out, the most undervalued aspect of our health. Sleep is it's important to get restorative sleep, and it's extremely important for our immune system. This is with as far as natural killer cell and T cell production, and you know, having the you know, the release of melatonin at night, and unfortunately, especially with the advent of technology, we're always staring at a screen. The blue light keeps us in a hyperstimulatory state, which doesn't allow us to fully relax. Many of us take our smartphones into the bedroom, constantly looking at them. this is extremely disruptive to our natural sleep rhythms, that circadian rhythm, if you will, and has a significant adverse impact on our health, because at night with sleep is when your body regenerates, both physically as well as neurologically speaking. So if you're not getting that solid 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep, you're going to be immunocompromised, as well as studies have shown that people who have difficulty with losing weight, if they're not getting proper sleep, metabolically that's extremely disruptive. So you should be on a schedule. It's very important, even during these times, that you turn off all technology if you can, an hour before bedtime. I always tell my patients, the bedroom's meant for two things, and technology has nothing to do with that. So no TVs in the bedroom, nothing along those lines, it's important that people begin to understand how to get proper rest and keep technology away from the sleeping space.
Very good. One other thing that really is putting a lot of angst into our lives is the stresses that are coming through all of this. Whether you own a business or whether you have a job, there are situations that are occurring that make life very difficult at this time. You might be on unemployment, if you can get unemployment. You might be hoping for a PPP loan from the government. All of these are making it hard to cope. How do you suggest we cope?
Yeah, well, I just touched upon a couple of them. I mean, exercise helps tremendously. Getting outside, getting away from it, stay away from, again, the media, the TV, constantly having that wash over you, that negativity. How many cases do we currently have? How much the national debt is growing. It's important to detach from that to a great deal. Stress is, again, extremely injurious or deleterious to our life. There's a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is something that, when allowed to stay risen for a prolonged period of time, is extremely destructive to our physiological function. And anything we can do, meditation. Now, meditation can come in many forms. It doesn't, I think classically we have this idea of sitting on the floor in lotus style and going ahead and humming, it doesn't need to be that. Just a few quiet, doing some deep breathing exercises, is extremely helpful. Just try to not to get too. I know it's extremely stressful. It's difficult to get away with, and as you mentioned, get away from. Rather that these are unprecedented times for us, but we have to. You have to go ahead and do everything you can to find some peace. Okay, because we'll get out of this, and we'll be better than ever.
A healthcare professional actually said to me, a nurse shared with me the importance of learning how to breathe. And in fact, taking deep breaths a couple times a day and holding them and then letting it back out actually lowers your blood pressure and helps you calm yourself.
Absolutely. And there's all different types of breathing. There's 7-4-7 breathing, 7 seconds in, 4-second hold, 7 seconds out. There's other combinations thereof, but if you think about it, it helps to oxygenate your tissues. It really does work. It's surprisingly a lot of people are inefficient breathers. Yes.
So the last area in the personal lifestyles you talk about are relationships. What do you mean by this?
Well, I mean, we all have certainly a couple sayings come to mind during this period. Is that absence makes the heart grow fonder, but familiarity breeds contempt. But I think our relationships, certainly with our family and friends, can sometimes be a disruptor. Can oftentimes, hopefully, be something that enhances our life. But our relationships, and I think that's what's been so troubling about this time is human beings are social creatures, and we need to see one another, and we need to interact with one another, and it's just the nature of the beast, if you will. So, and I'm sure that's what we're all really looking forward to it, whether it's during times of worship, during other get-togethers, being at a sporting event. It's just it really helps. It's part of, again, that healthy lifestyle that we all need. I mean, and getting back to the literature, I found it interesting over the past couple of years, the amount of studies that have been coming out, especially where the elderly are concerned, where social isolationism and loneliness is really a fertilizer for all disease, if you will, and they have actually determined that it is as harmful, if not, or in some cases more so than smoking or other habits that can lead to poor health. So I think it's important that when we talk about relationships, we don't forget about the elderly, the mentally disadvantaged. That if we're feeling this, there, and even when this is all over, I think we need to realize that we need to reach out to them. We need to keep them engaged in society, and because there is a difference between being isolated and being lonely. Okay, you can be isolated, but still, you don't want to fall into that loneliness and despair stage, because that can cause a host of problems that, in some cases, is the beginning of a unavoidable decline.
So in the midst of all this turmoil in our lives, in this pandemic, using these different approaches in these 5 categories seem to help make life a bit better. This blended approach really should help us cope with a lot of the things that are going on in all of these 5 things. So is your suggestion that we take little steps, baby steps in each one of these 5?
Yeah, and it doesn't, just as you meant, I think that's an important point to emphasize. Just small little changes. Half an hour more of sleep, eliminating sodas from your diet, getting a few thousand extra steps into your life. You don't, unfortunately, we all, I think, during the beginning of the year, you see the gyms just flooded with people, the New Year's resolution folks, or everybody's gung-ho, but after a while, nobody can sustain that. You have to do something sustainable. And what I have found is that kind of the more as soon as you kind of get that boulder moving a little bit, get a little bit of inertia behind it, then you start to feel better. And as you feel better, you feel like you want to do more things. You want to exercise more. So it's just getting started in some form or fashion. And it doesn't have to be these extremes one way or the other. A little bit of movement, a little bit of improved dietary changes, a little bit better sleep, focusing on those relationships a little bit, decreasing your stress, and it eventually will make a significant difference.
This all leads to the overarching concept to this. I see the matrix right behind you.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the functional medicine approach, the matrix. And if they had a little bit in each one of these categories, this should help them, correct?
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's functional medicine is a more personalized approach to patient care, I guess you can say, or health care. It's looking at all those aspects that we just have touched upon and detailed. It's taking an upstream approach, looking at root causation, peeling away the layers of the onion, really looking at that individual's unique biochemistry and physiology, but using time-honored protocols when it comes to testing, and it's very important to realize it's not an either or when it comes to care. Sometimes people, unfortunately, will be overly critical of one approach to care, whether it's a more conventional approach. That's the, I like to look at it as, different toolboxes and a truly integrative approach, from all facets of medicine. And my emphasis is on, the lifestyle portion of it, and I use some of the same, as I mentioned, time-honored, metrics in terms of with patient care and look at blood chemistries and do some, deeper digging and look at a history from really a timeline, if you will, from the person's, emergence on this fine mortal coil to the present day, and what happened in between all that has led you. When you begin to express symptoms, that means there's been something amiss for a little while. Instead of going to we really have had more of a disease management system that has evolved over the past several years and or decades, if you will. And this is, it's a more nuanced approach to treatment. In some ways, harkens back to the days of yore when you had the local doctor, regardless of what discipline they were, just they didn't have all these tools at their disposal. They really had to kind of get to know their patient, and kind of the old saying, well, old doc, whoever it might be, he treated me from the cradle to my family from the cradle to the grave, and knowing a family history, knowing environmental influences, knowing all these other factors are extremely helpful when you're trying to navigate that patient down a path of health and wellness. And now, granted, the patient needs to be in a place where they're willing to make changes. It's not a. It's a very participatory type of process between clinician and patient. Okay, it's no longer this paternalistic doctor. I say you do this, and that's what you do. But if you're not going to change anything, then you're going to have to do that. Okay, because that's what's going to keep you alive to some extent. I feel this everything can dovetail, very well together. As I tell all my patients, it's important that you work with your primary care doctor, that we all work together. You're seeing specialists, that everybody's on the same page, because ultimately it's the same goal. It's almost looking at it from the military perspective. Okay, we have our Air Force, we have the Marines, you have the Navy, you have the Army, you have the Coast Guard. But ultimately, their goals, they do things differently, okay? But their goal is to protect our country, okay? So regardless of your healthcare discipline, that's the way I look at this. It's all about optimizing, the health of the patient. And it's looking through a different lens, okay? And all lenses have their pros and cons, but it's something that have been passionate about for quite some time. I try to like to help patients go ahead and lead a healthier lifestyle, and so that is basically the foundational principles of functional medicine.